You see, what we're talking about here is an organism that imitates other life forms, and it imitates them perfectly. It tried to digest them, absorb them, and in the process shape its own cells to imitate them. This, for instance, that's not dog. It's imitation. We got to it before it had time to finish.
Finish what?
Finish imitating these dogs.
Attorney Springfield saying that Attorney Ross feels that he's done dealing with his child support problems. The fact is that Mike was earning quite a bit of money as a commissioner and paying a large amount of child support. You can look at those payments through those years and see that he consistently made those payments. When he stopped making those payments was when he lost his job.
It's in my power to make sure that I follow that contract and until such time that contract is modified, i.e. the modification. I'm going to do everything in my power. That's why I'm here, doing everything so that I can make that payment through Grey County child support enforcement agency, and I will continue to do so until such time.
You're well aware of this. I know that you use the words, I'll make the payments that I can.
Well,
That's not sufficient. You have a child support obligation, a legal obligation. I expect people to follow court orders. I expect people to follow court orders. So, Mr. Ross, I am going to sentence you to 6 months incarceration on count 2, felony 5 non-support of dependents. I am going to sentence you to 6 months. They will run consecutive to each other.
Yeah, that's what happens, man.
Oh my God!
Yeah, that's what happens. Where's my money?
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Yeah.
Hotep, I am the Amen Osiris, the one and only undisputed God of law. We are Deception Stoppers, America's only 4D education service. Thank God I'm not a lawyer. Thank God this is not a law firm. We don't advocate that you don't support your human offspring. We simply advocate that you made them private, take care of them private. All right. Now, you've seen the video, gentlemen and ladies. All right. I'm here to teach you that judges, okay, there is no such thing as a court order requiring any man or woman to pay the 4D crime family. It does not exist. Okay. Now, we're labeling this one, does a court order exist under 4D of the Act? Hell no, it does not. All right. Now, I've taught you, and I've taught you, and I've taught you that the 4D program is a partnership between the federal government and the states. All right. A partnership is an association of 2 or more persons as co-owners of a business for profit, and the states still make a profit from the 4D program. All right. And you know it's a business because they have customers. Okay, our customer service teams work with pay rents. Go to the website of the 4D crime family that's operating in your state and look around. You will more likely find the word customer service. Based off of my videos, and now that they know that we're on to them, a lot of them have taken it out, but I'd say about 75% of them still have that word customer and customer service in there. More importantly, this phrase right here, this comes from the federal government. All right, gentlemen and ladies, the state does not run the 4D program. The federal government runs the 4D program. All right, we're going to get into that in a minute. Now, let's get on to these judges here. All right, contractors are not judges. Do you understand that? All right, we're going to show you the definition of a judge. We're going to show you the definition of a contractor. Remember, expressio unius persons est alterius. All right, the mention of one person is the exclusion of another. Okay. So if you go to the Constitution, it'll give you the judicial branch. It will also give you the executive branch. The 4D agency operates out of the executive branch. It is not a state agency. All right, so we're going to get into this. So for those of you who are thinking that there's a court order for you to pay the 4D crime family, all right, you're dead wrong. All right, I don't care who tells you what, okay, you're wrong. There is no court order. All right, now, number right here, it says contractors are not judges. Title 4D contractors are not judges. All right, foremost, again, the 4D program, the 4D agency, check this out. All right, Section 8, Federal Child Support Enforcement Manual, page 47. However, every federal agency is responsible for responding to a 4D program as if the federal agency were a private business. In red, blood. Okay? Now, check it out. Under 42 USC, subsection 659, consent by the United States to income withholding, garnishment, and similar proceedings for enforcement of 4D and alimony obligations. So when it says here similar proceedings, so anything dealing with Title 4D of the Social Security Act, all right, the United States, right, and its instrumentalities thereof consented to this. Check it out. All right. Section A. While performing under 4D of the Act, which is color of law, color of authority, and color of office, the United States or the District of Columbia, which is the same, including any agency, subdivision, or instrumentality thereof, shall be subject in like manner and to the same extent as if the United States or the District of Columbia or instrumentality or agency thereof were a private person. Let's look at the word private person in federal law. All right. Private person means a person who does not have sovereign or other special immunity or privilege which causes the person not to be subject to legal process. Gentlemen, okay, when these judges are performing under Title 4D of the Act in return for payment from the 4D crime family, which is not a state agency, they act in the capacity of an independent contractor. All right. The contractor and its agents, employees, and subcontractors will act in performance of this 4D contract in an independent capacity and not as officers, employees, or agents of the state or the 4D agency. I care less about the 4D agency, gentlemen. Okay. 4D agency is not a state agency. All right. But here's the catch. How does a person who is not an officer, employee, or agent of the state have the authority to issue a court order under the Constitution? All right, let's keep it moving. So, the 4D agency, gentlemen, is the instrumentality of a federal corporation. For those of you who are out there who know, all right, the United States is a corporation. All right, so this is what happens. The 4D agency submits a business plan to the federal government and giving them assurance that it will be ran in compliance with Title 4D of the Act. All right. And what they're doing is they're operating under Title 4D, its regulations, and other issuances of the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Okay. That plan, all right, is basically telling the Federal Office of Child Support Services, that's actually who runs it, all right, if their plan is going to be approved or not. All right. So, by submission of this plan and giving assurance that it will be administered in conformity with the specific requirements stipulated in Title 4D, its regulations, and other applicable official issuances of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, renders it a 28 USC 15C instrumentality of the 15A corporate United States. The United States, gentlemen and ladies, is a corporation. All right, that corporation is physically domiciled in the District of Columbia. All right, and under federal law, I believe it's 817. All right, its authority is only a 10-mile square radius. So how are they getting out here to all these different states? Through these contracts. All right, so because it is the instrumentality of the federal government, all right, the 4D agency fails to meet, all right, the 46013 term state agency, which is any department, agency, or instrumentality of a state or of a political subdivision of a state, any department, agency, or instrumentality of two or more states, or of two or more political subdivisions of a state or states, and any person who has the authority to acquire property by eminent domain under state law. The 4D agency is an instrumentality of the federal government. It cannot acquire property by eminent domain. The Department of Human Services or Social Services in the state, they can, all right, but the 4D agency can't. All right, it's within that, just like you put your money in your wallet. All right, moving on. The 4D agency is an alone, detached, and disconnected unit. It's an organizational unit. Look at the definitions. 45 CFR 301.1 provides that the 4D agency is the what? The alone, single, and separate, detached organizational unit. Unit means one. Single means alone, detached. All right. Separate means detached, disconnected. Okay. To disunite, to divide. The 4D agency is not a state agency. So what you have here is you have a judge, a so-called judge, right, who has an oath to the Constitution, all right, to uphold and defend and support the Constitution of this state, the United States. But now, when they go into this contract, they're not doing that anymore. They're no longer judges. Okay. Once they sign that contract, that judicial shit was out the window. And gentlemen, if any of you have been arrested, all right, for non-payment of child support, all right, you got arrested. You didn't get arrested by a sheriff or a cop. You got arrested by a private person. All right. So here's the deal. Can you sue these people? Yes, you can. You can sue them. Why? You can't sue a judge when he's doing, or him or her doing their judicial duties. You cannot. You can sue a 4D crime contractor. Check this out. I got one in here somewhere. Here it is. All right. Give me a second here. I got to redo this. All right. So I'm going to show you an insert. And in this, oh, come on. Hold on. All right. Give me a second. All right. So in this insert, you know what? And I can't even show it right here. But this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read it. Okay. Now, this is coming from the New York Constitution. New York Constitution. All right. All public officers have to swear an oath. Judges, lawyers or prosecutors, attorneys generals. All right. Clerks of courts and judges. All right. The 4D program, again, is a partnership between the federal government and the state. All right. And as you know, a partnership is an association of two or more persons as co-owners of a business for profit. All right. So states and all participants in that state profit from the 4D program and is free to spend that share of profits in any manner they see fit. All right. Now, in Article 6, subsection 20, be judge of the family court. Now, we're talking about New York, but this applies nationwide. Who was elected or appointed may not engage in the conduct of any other profession or business which interferes with the performance of his or her judicial duties. All right, because Title 4D is a private business for profit, that judge is violating the Constitution by conducting, all right, business which interferes with the performance of his or her judicial duties. All right, so when they do that, all right, that's a violation. All right, let me go back to the sharing here. Sorry about that. I had to read it off a separate screen because I don't know how to. All right, there we go. All right, so let's go here. And bear with me. There we go. There we go. All right, here we go. All right, so what you have here, ladies and gentlemen, is that video you saw. That was a person who was impersonating a judge. All right, that was unconstitutional. All right. Title 4D is contractual in nature. You got to deal with the 3 C's. If it's contractual, it's not constitutional. And even if it was, it would still require your consent. CCC, contractual, constitutional consent. The legitimacy of Congress's power to legislate under the spending power thus rests on whether the state voluntarily, there it is again, voluntarily and knowingly accepts the terms of the contract. There can, of course, be knowing acceptance if a state is unaware of the conditions or is unable to ascertain what is expected of it. All right, accordingly, Congress intended to impose a condition on the grant of federal monies. It must do so unambiguously. So, number one, here's the catch. Isn't the state government supposed to be sovereign? Oh, we got sovereign immunity. No, they don't, because when they went to that contract, right, and they accepted those conditions, they waived their sovereignty. Case law, U.S. versus Sage, 1996. It's supposed to be a comma error or whatever that is. All right, 4D is nothing more than an interstate contract. 4D agreements are equivalent to interstate commercial contracts, and rejecting the idea that 4D payment obligations are somehow different from student loans or car notes. The 4D program is expanded across state territories to demand payment from non-custodial pay rents. And I added this, all right, not from Genesis 1 and 26, men. All right. Title 4D is contractual in nature. All right. Any person who is participating in the 4D program, where is it at? It's up here. All right, is doing so in an independent capacity and not as an officer, employee, or agent of the state. And you can confirm that under 42 USC 659. All right. The United States, the District of Columbia, any agency, agency, federal office, child support, Department of Human Services, or instrumentality, which is the 4D agency that operates in the state, is subject in like manner. And to the extent that is the United States and all these agencies where a private person, right, who does not have sovereign or other special immunity or privilege, which causes that person, all right, not to be subject to your suit. Okay. You can sue them. All right. You can sue them. I'm going to switch pages here. All right. So here's the deal, gentlemen. You gotta listen. Your mind is like a parachute. It only works when you open it. All right. It only works when you open it. I'm opening another screen here. All right, there we go. All right. So here's how it works. It was all premeditated from the beginning. All right. Here's the premeditation. All right. So you have to go back to the intent, gentlemen. And if you're not tearing this down, if nobody's teaching you this, they're not teaching you anything. All right. Premeditation with malicious intent. The 45 CFR 301.10 plan is a comprehensive statement submitted by the 4D agency, that means the crime boss, all right, describing the nature and scope of its program and giving assurance that it will be administered in conformity with the specific requirements stipulated in Title 4D, its regulations, and other applicable issuances of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, agency instrumentality. All right. The 4D plan contains all information necessary for the federal OCSS to determine whether the plan can be approved as a basis for federal profits by participating in the program. So, by number one, by giving assurance, I'm sorry. All right. So, it's giving assurance that the 4D program will be administered with the requirements of stipulated in 4D. Title 4D was never enacted into into positive law, which means they're operating under the color of law. All right. Its regulations and other applicable issuances of the United States Department of Health and Human Services. All right. There's its sovereignty right there. It gave assurance to the United States Department of Health and Human Services, not to the state. All right. If you're going to rob a bank, you better have a plan. But when you get busted, all right, because you had a plan, that makes it premeditated. All right. You want to smoke the 4D crime boss and you hatch out a plan and you get busted. All right, this is for fiction only. All right, then guess what? You had a plan that makes it premeditated. All right. So this plan, under the plan, all right, if you do your reading and research, this 4D plan, right? 45 CFR 302.34. The 4D plan requires the 4D agency to enter into contracts which are reflected in a record. All right. So, in other words, they're in a record. You can do a FOIA request for these, a Freedom of Information Act request for them. All right. To provide 4D services under 45 CFR 303.107 terms with courts, clerks of courts, law enforcement officials such as district attorneys, attorneys general, and similar public attorneys and prosecutors, corrections officials, and sheriffs. all right, who perform administrative duties of the 40 agency that pertain to 40 cases in return for payment by the 40 agency. Gentlemen, that is bribery at its best. All right, that is bribery. When a sheriff is going out and doing these 4D raids, like they do a couple times a year, usually around the holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving, all right, they're not acting as a sheriff, they're acting as a private person. Legally and constitutionally, because they're operating under contract, and if they come to arrest a man, a real man, a soldier, all right, for some child support bullshit, that soldier has the right to pull out his weapons and lay every one of them down. And guess what? Yeah, he's going to go to jail if they don't kill him. All right, but here's the deal. All right, in the long run, what's going to happen? He's going to win because all he has to do is prove, hey, they were operating under a contract. When a contract is a legal it creates, destroys, or modifies a legal relation. These officers of the state who have sworn an oath to the Constitution, when they go into that contract, they establish a legal relationship with the private business, which destroys the legal relationship between them and the Constitution. Gentlemen and ladies, there is no court order to pay child support. Now, under that contract, they have to perform under 45 CFR 303.107 terms. All right, here are those terms. The 40 agency must ensure that all contracts, A, contain a clear description of the specific duties, functions, and responsibilities of each what? Contractor. Specify the definite standard of performance which meet federal requirements, not state. Here's my favorite, C. Specify that the contractors will comply with Title 4D of the Act, implementing federal regulations and any other applicable federal regulations and requirements. Constitution out the window. Gentlemen, I'm done. All right. We're no longer giving consultations. All right. If you are interested in going to war with these people, then you contact me, and what we will provide you with are weapons and some training on how to use those weapons. All right. I'll have a video coming up after this when I get a little bit more time. I will show you how to obtain these weapons and show you how to enroll in this class, and we will get this party started. Okay. Do not take my word for it. Check everything that you've seen here. All right, you're not under a court order to pay child support. You can sue the judge impersonator. If you've been arrested, you can sue the sheriff. You can sue the clerk of court. Okay, you can sue the prosecutor or the state attorney general, whoever. You can sue them because they are private persons. I'm the Ahmed Osiris, folks. All right, information's on the screen. Bang my email. All right, send a donation. All right, but we will enable you to free yourself. Hotep.